if I'm sitting there and I'm like cursing and like, I'm turning people off, like, okay, that's one thing. But if I'm just going about my daily business and I know people are getting value from it, then what, Joe Blow in Ohio is saying about, oh my God, you're going to get kidnapped in Mexico. I don't even really need to respond to that. Just because I know it'll end up wasting like an hour of my day, if I'm going back and forth with somebody who's not even going to be a client anyway.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into my No Name podcast. My name's Lauren, and today we have Fletcher Wheaton on, who is an American living in Cabo selling real estate. And it's interesting because he started as a real estate agent and he now has his own brokerage there. He also has a very successful YouTube channel. So if you have anything that you want to know about Cabo, please go there, check it out. You're going to learn so much. He has a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for being here.
Of course, Lauren, thanks. Happy to do this again. And last time I thought we had a pretty interesting conversation, especially around just marketing in general. So looking forward to kind of build on that. And it's awesome to get, two different insights on this.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about this stuff. So today is pretty much going to be marketing. And because Fletcher is so good at really curating the videos for who he wants his client to be, he calls them avatars. We're going to talk about, I guess, the mindset a little bit, and then what you do to get your ideal client, which they all kind of go together. If you want to start the conversation and open it up with like what that means to you, like what's your avatar, that would be helpful.
We have a new agent and he's doing everything right. And he's starting to get out in front of the camera. And he was at an open house the other day and met somebody, and he comes back and he's like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast with this person. And I told him to do it because it was an at bat. But I also was like, hey, did you start writing down video ideas? I always have my ideas written down to the point where it's almost too much, but just a little bit more strategic about who you're speaking to. So a lot of people, when they're first starting out, and there's so many different types of content you can do, right? But I always say, like, who is your best client, right? And if you could you get another one of those? And everybody's always like, yes. Why don't you do a video aimed like you're speaking at that person? Not specifically, but just would resonate with somebody like them. And a good example I can give you on this is I had a tour. This was probably almost 2 years ago. Really nice guy. He was from Austin, Texas, and he was a big golfer. And he was looking at a really nice golf villa, and he didn't end up buying, and I think he will down the road. But I was like, man, I want to get more clients like this. So I basically kind of did a couple videos where it was kind of like twofold. I was driven at him, one to show him like the lifestyle that he could have, right? Not in a way where I was trying to like rub it in, right? But like try to get somebody like him. And then two was like, hey, by speaking to him, I was going to attract other people like that were super polite from the areas I wanted to work with, that were qualified, and that like golf, going out on the golf course and filming, in the clubhouses and stuff, maybe doing interviews with people, things like that, as opposed to just spray and pray and really not have and you can have so many different avatars, right? So I'm just talking about getting a little bit more strategic in targeting what type of client or what type of person you're trying to speak to.
It makes sense. And the next topic that I wanted to ask is like, how do you pick do you say a niche or a niche, whichever way you say it? But that kind of blends right into picking your avatar, right? Like most people get into real estate, they want to sell luxury real estate. Cool. So does everybody else. So like, how do you differentiate? What's your niche in luxury real estate? So people are probably wondering, well, like, how do you narrow that down? Is that by location? Is that by price point? Everybody just does the same thing. I think we all copy each other. We all just like walk through a house and try and have cool transitions. That's like the video.
Exactly. So this is a really good question. And the sayings like, hey, the rich are in the niches. The smaller the target, the bigger the bullseye. If you speak to everybody, you speak to nobody. And generally, I see a lot of agents do that. They're just trying to go out and do everything. Good example, and none of this has to last forever, right? So it's not like I'm doing content right now, right? So you can always change. But when I started, I really focused on pre-construction, and basically it was like, hey, if you buy this place at 300,000, it's going to be worth 400,000 when it's built out, and that thesis played out and it worked. And there's risk with that. So I brought up the risk, I brought up the benefits, and that's really how I started cutting my teeth. I was very successful at that. And while I don't just do pre-construction now, I was able to kind of establish myself as a quote unquote expert in that area, just because it was like a lot of what I was doing. And that was a very hot play. So once again, it doesn't have to be, but if you're starting out, for example, or you're just trying to regroup, I think being a little bit more strategic about it, and you can do different things, right? So it doesn't just have to be that, but I think just getting a little bit more strategic in the content that you're putting out will help. And, what's the worst case? It's like you can always pivot down the road. It depends, right? So you mentioned luxury real estate. Like you said, a lot of people are trying to do it. Maybe you're showing like the lifestyle of that, right? And I see most real estate content is people are just trying to sell something, right? So it's like, hey, look at this. And you almost, I call it commodity marketing. It's like, you're just another agent. And in our area where we have, 1,200, 1,300 agents on the MLS, you want to be able to stick out. If you just do that type of content where you're walking and trying to sell, I think you don't interrupt the scroll. You don't get the attention because you're just kind of somebody else. And then another thing too is, like, we have agents on our team and they're older. And I was telling them, I'm like, look, there's a lot of people that see my content and they might not like who I am. Right. So as you guys start to do content, I think you're going to attract your target audience. Right. And then when you start doing enough content and you get that feedback, you're able to kind of go back and forth with that. Right. And then you get more ideas by like the questions these qualified leads or your target audience or target niche is asking, and then you get more and more, right?
I think people, like what I've heard over the years, are people struggle to pick what they want their niche to be. And there's not really a right or wrong. And I like that you are reinforcing that it's not forever, because I had started my career working in this segment of Phoenix that's very, very affluent, and it's called Arcadia. And I was only holding open houses in Arcadia proper Wednesday to Sunday for 2 years. And I didn't get any business out of it, and I was like, okay, this is just not working. 2 years is a long time. Hopefully some people out there are a little smarter than that. But it just took 2 years for me to finally give up, because I didn't want to give up. I wanted to stay in the game. Finally, it just kind of struck me like, okay, maybe this is a waste of time. I made a lot of contacts, but none of them, what closed, I should say, came from those open houses, but they were not in the area that I wanted. Because when you have a $5 million open house, everybody's coming in because it's eye candy. It's just something they want to see, they want to walk through. And so you have to be self-aware of, yes, you're putting your energy into something, but maybe that activity is not productivity. Therefore, you're not getting the results that you want. So that also leads me to my next question of, how often do you change your marketing strategy?
When I sit down with our marketing director and we implement something new, I generally say like, hey, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this for like 6 months, right? And then we'll make a decision. Because what I see a lot of people do is, once again, they're just going from one thing to the other. And especially if you're starting out, you just need time, right? We talked about that last time, kind of like your at bats. So I think it really depends. I've gotten to the point where for example, I do a couple different things like right now that are just super easy. Somebody had a beachfront home the other day, and they reached out and I was like, hey, can I come film this? And it was in a certain area. So I kind of targeted the area of the East Cape, and I've really been on that a lot this year. And that's like one out of every 4 videos that I'm doing on YouTube. I'm also doing a lot of stuff on construction. I really like construction. It's something that's interesting. There's a lot of construction going on here because you have a ton of land, and it's an easy way to tell a story. Hey, this is my client from Denver who's building, we're 50% done. Here's the good, here's the bad, things like that. And it's super visual. And then I can do the golf course content stuff too. With that being said, like I've kind of been away from the golf content. So I think, like you said, if you're doing something and you're doing it for 2 years and maybe it's not working and you don't enjoy it, especially,
Right.
like it's not painful for me to go film a beachfront home, right? Like that was awesome. Be like, hey, is it open on this weekend? I'm trying to get a discount. But anyway, I think the bigger mistake would be trying to pivot too early. And then you're kind of, you're jack of all trades, master of none. At the end of the day, too, I believe, and I tell Larissa, our marketing director, marketing is an experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to be creative and find ways to get ideas out there that are going to resonate. So I'm all about experimenting, but, just don't do that, where at least you're talking to like an ideal avatar or client that you want. I think it's fine, but I see most people, they just kind of, they'll give up way too early. Pivoting obviously is a big thing. Markets change, people's interests change. If it's an investment play, like good ideas will change, so just kind of be ahead on that. And then like another thing too is one that's really good too is just market data, right? And we have an agent and I told him, like, hey, we're going to sit down and do market data. And the first video we did on market data was, okay, in this neighborhood, we sold 60 houses. This neighborhood, we sold like 40 houses. Here we sold. And I told him, I said, well, look, let's go back to, I really like Denver, right? It's really good clients, like super nice people, affluent area, super direct flight here. So I'll say, hey, like, what is the guy in Denver who's watching this video or the lady in Denver who's watching this video? Do you think you telling her that 60 homes means anything? What about like the year over year? So tell a little bit of a story behind it versus just like presenting data. And that's what I told them. I basically had people and I said like, from this page and a half of information, we did a 45-minute podcast, basically of just storytelling,
Wow.
So I think you just got to get more creative. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people just don't want to. And that's why I appreciate you, Lauren. You're into it, this is your career. It's like a lifestyle for you. And I can tell when you do content, it's not like a chore. It just comes naturally to you.
Thank you for saying that because it's taken a lot of time to get there. I used to hate it and resent it. And, getting on I have some follow-up questions because you said so many good things in there. Like one of the questions I have is, do you follow the trend once it's begun? Or do you hear about something and give it a try before the trend is started? The best example I can give is TikTok, because obviously it's kind of done now. But if something like that were to come along again, like how many new platforms can you like give your attention to see if it's going to take off versus give it a little time and then jump on and say, okay, this is actually a good one?
I would say if you're starting out, I would do like the 80-20 rule,
Okay.
So probably, if the platform that you're going to be using is Instagram, going on that, and then maybe do like 20% on, YouTube, or if it's LinkedIn, or if you like writing, and I'm starting to see this too, like Chat GPT, it's a lot of this stuff that people are using. I was going off of like written word, right? So going in on the format that you want, as opposed to, once again, just kind of like diluting it and trying to go to different things. And there's software too that can push your content to multiple different platforms at the same time. Now each
like a Meta or Calendly or something.
Yeah, no, like so like we use Hootsuite and it blasts it out too, and it's interesting to see. I was talking to Larissa the other day, and like one had, it had all this reach on, and this is all organic. Had it all the reach on TikTok, on Instagram, it wasn't really performing, and sometimes it's the other way around. But like we'll boost it to 5 or 6 different platforms at once. Now you should be at least kind of catering to the audience on that. Another thing too is I had an agent the other day and was asking me specifically about other agents. I actually don't really pay attention to trends or other agents, to be honest.
Okay.
And it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm going to botch his name, but I think it's Anthony Claudice, or he's the lead singer. And it was this interview I remember, and they asked him what music he listened to. And he was like, I don't listen to any other music because I'm worried that it's going to like dilute my style and then I'll become more of like the mainstream and people like me for who I am. Look, when you're starting out, I think it's good, right? But also at my point too, where I'm like, oh man, like it's almost like an opportunity call. Should I do this or should I do that? You know, where I'm not so much basing it on trends, but once again, experiment. And if trends are hot, you know, we have an agent, Pedro, and his videos are hilarious. You know, like he'll do this. It'll be like two agents, but it'll be like him.
Yeah.
Right. And it'll be like him. And then like he'll have one that he calls him like Cabo San Lucas. And the guy's like, I don't care what the client wants. I want what I want, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny because he told me as he's doing these videos, people are like, hey, are you talking about like this specific agent in our area? You know, because people are actually like that, you know?
Yeah.
But it resonates, and he gets so many likes and comments from this stuff too, where he's getting the attention. Now, is that necessarily drawing a buyer or moving the needle? Maybe not, but he'll do these and then he'll have something else, right? You know, last time we talked, you spoke about the different buckets. If I tried to do that, because I was like, oh, maybe I should try to do that, you know?
Right.
And I'm saying this like I work hand in hand with him. So that's why I see this. Once again, I'm telling you, like I try not to follow too much real estate content just because I don't want it to get diluted. But I told myself, I'm like, if I did this, first of all, it'd feel like super inauthentic. I think I'm a funny guy sometimes, but like, that's not my personality.
That's not your funny.
You know, so people would see that and be like, man, this guy is like, he's going a little, you know, off here, and like, you know, this is like kind of erratic for him. Maybe I don't know if I can trust this guy, but for Pedro, that works perfect, you know?
Right.
So I think like the 80-20 rule is a good one to start out when you're really just kind of hone in on something. And then as you get more and more, you know, maybe you're like, hey, I need to diversify, or maybe I want to do some more long-term. But as far as trends, I think it's a really good idea. And, you know, that's why my marketing's so different than Larissa, who is our marketing director, because she's really good at that stuff. You know, whereas me, you know, in my long form, it's more about like value, you know, and that's another question. I'm like, hey, what value is this going to provide somebody?
I gave it a good 6 months, and I was really just focused on sellers and like strategy and what I've seen in my career and kind of storytelling. I didn't get any business from it. But it was like a hard push of like long posts that take an hour to write, 5 days a week, you know, sometimes videos, sometimes pictures, whatever it is. And it's like, okay, that was 6 months. People can at least see that I'm knowledgeable. I can demonstrate that I have experience, but it maybe didn't get what I want. Now, I think it takes time for that to mature because it has to live on your page. You have no idea who's looking, who's saving, who's stalking. And then eventually it's like, okay, now I'm like, okay, well, what's my next chapter of 6 months going to look like for social media? And I think it's okay to do that. But people feel like maybe they get put into a cage and they want to stay there because it's working, but nothing lasts forever, right?
By the way, the beachfront home that I just filmed, this guy came in as a lead like over 2 years ago. And I had been kind of reaching out cold. I think it was just because this house was on the East Cape where I'm talking about I'm doing the content. So I think he originally saw, you know, something I did, but now I'm kind of going more into that area. And then I was able to reach out, and all of a sudden, you know, he's asking, how much do you think my home's worth? You know, and we know where that can lead in that relationship, right? Another thing is I'm writing a book right now, buying real estate in Mexico, and it's tedious. Like, I'm not a good writer. I hired, actually, he's in San Antonio, Texas. He used to be a tenant of mine when we had rental properties in New Orleans. Really good guy. And I told him, I was like, look, I don't care if nobody reads it, but I kind of want to do it. And now I'm starting to go down like rabbit holes, so like one thing was like gentrification and what maybe, and I have my thoughts, but basically there's a guy, a local Mexican here, and I wanted to get his opinion. So like, and this is not a chapter, just part of a chapter, right? But I'm a QR code going to like the interview. So, at the end of the chapter, there's going to be like videos, so for example, the legal section is going to be, let's be honest, not that many people are going to be jumping at the hip to go read about the legal aspects of buying real estate in Mexico, but it's a huge thing because it's a different country, right? And like after each one of those, I'll make it digestible and be like, hey, if you want to learn more about this, here's the QR code for this video. I'm almost doing the book just as much for me as I am for the person that's going to read it. And I think because I'm not trying to sell it, and I will when it comes out, right? But I think it's going to actually be better because I'm not just trying to like jump on. As we get deeper into it, like new ideas come, I'm like, oh, let's add that to this chapter. But I wouldn't be able to do that on my own too. And just so I'm saying, when people are doing content, maybe you need to have a coach. Maybe you need to have somebody, if writing is a weakness, maybe you need to have somebody that helps you write. If it's the emailing, if it's, things like that. So I think just being open-minded to experiment, most importantly, just to not like stop. Because we spoke about this last time. The worst thing you can do is do something for like 2 or 3 months, like for example, video, and I'd be like, this isn't working. Because then you didn't do it long enough to really know if it was working or not.
Correct. And you said something in our last video that was, you need to make a video a week and post it, and you're going to learn and you're going to see and you're going to track it. And I really took that to heart. So I've been making videos and it's such a good piece of advice because what are you going to do? You can only get better. I mean, you have to watch it, but you can only get better. Why wouldn't you? If that's your business, if that's your name and your brand that's out there, that's going to live there forever, why wouldn't you want it to improve? And the only way you can do that is through practice.
The first year that I was, and we're talking like when I say a video a year, that's like long form, like YouTube, maybe not so much production, but like, just actually getting into the routine of doing something, and I used to do these like TikTok videos where I would just like experiment. And this was like kind of like COVID days where, and I was going on a lot of hikes and I would speak to clients. And then on the hike, I'd be like, hey, somebody might say like, is Mexico dangerous or something? And I'd be like, hey, and like, you could tell, like people would be like, man, where is he? Is he, so it wasn't just, there was like movement happening. So it wasn't just like a static video, but once again, that was just kind of a way to experiment. And every once in a while I'll see those like, they're still getting like views and things like that. So
like you said earlier, time is the only thing that works against you when you're new. Once you are seasoned, hopefully you have experience and you've learned some lessons along the way to improve, but time is on your side because you've at least done enough deals, done enough videos, whatever it is. You have a sense of who you are, and that goes back to like, I have a rule of like, you have the avatar of who you want to bring to you. And I have the rule of like, you need to understand who you are in that role. And being on camera is a character, like, who are you? Like, I've had to learn to calm down, like I'm very smiley and laughy and I'm always trying to crack a joke, which does not convey well through camera. It's much better in person. So I've really had to learn to like tone my personality down because it doesn't fit well for camera. And so those are just things that you will learn about yourself. I'm sure you have examples along the way of like, do I need to sound more excited? Do I need to be more concise?
It got me thinking, because it's funny. A lot of people, when they first start, they're worried about like comments, right? And, so I have a lot of, they're scared to post because they think like somebody, like, oh my God, I have like a zit today. Like people are going to notice that. And it's like, man, we were joking about my intro. I said, keep it short because nobody cares about me. Right. Because I believe that to be true. They do to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, most people are worried about themselves. Yes. And that's just human nature. So, it's always good to take constructive criticism. I don't know if I told you this last time, but I was doing, because I would do these like GoPro videos. And this lady wrote, and at this point I was doing my call to action was like my email. So this lady writes me an email and I was doing a lot of talking, right? So I had the camera like on my face. And so she writes an email and she's like, "Oh, hey, great videos." She's like, "By the way, maybe, turn the camera around and show more of the house instead of just your face. Like, just a suggestion. Have a good one." And my first reaction was like, "What a B word," And then I was like, I think she's right. Like, I don't need to have like my face the whole time. Like, they can hear what I'm saying, you know? And then there's
That's
other
hilarious.
people like that come in and they'll like, they say all sorts of maybe mean things, or there's always like a troll that jumps in. And somebody described it. They're like, if you're teaching a class, there's always going to be the guys in the back that are shooting spitballs, right? But it's
Mhm.
really about the people in the first two rows that are interested and are actually listening to the lecture. So most of the people that are going to be writing that stuff aren't going to be clients or customers anyway. So, take it with a grain of salt. And if you're doing something like if I'm sitting there and I'm like cursing and like, I'm turning people off, like, okay, that's one thing. But if I'm just going about my daily business and I know people are getting value from it, then what, Joe Blow in Ohio is saying about, oh my God, you're going to get kidnapped in Mexico. I don't even really need to respond to that, just because I know it'll end up wasting like an hour of my day, if I'm going back and forth with somebody who's not even going to be a client anyway.
Right. And people just feel comfortable saying whatever they need to say because they can, and it's anonymous essentially. So, and I do think it's a good platform to just learn to have thick skin and to not take things personally. I think the comments probably really affect a perfectionist or a people pleaser who like want everyone to like them, or who a comment is really going to affect, even though it's like somebody that you don't know, or like you said, you're never going to get business from. But it's just interesting. Everybody takes it differently. And that's even part of your character. How do you receive the constructive criticism that's real, not the BS that comes with it? Okay. We always can talk forever. So the other thing that we wanted to discuss was setting your own schedule and how this is a downside, because if you do not have a habit or you do not put it in your calendar, taking the time to work on social media, whether it's filming, editing, YouTube thumbnails, liking, commenting, sharing, whatever it is, it takes time and you have to do it, right? And you're like, oh, I'll just do it for 10 minutes a day. Well, the whole day goes by, the next whole day goes by, and all of a sudden you don't have any engagement on your social media channels, right? So I'm curious, how do you plan for it? Like, what have you learned from putting it on the back burner? Or maybe it's never been on the back burner for you and it's your non-negotiable every day. Like, what's your relationship with your calendar and marketing?
Okay, that's a really good question. First, we did a Cabo Real Estate Summit, and we had Nisha go, Beverly Hills come, and she was basically talking about how, the good news about working in real estate is that you set your own hours. The bad news about real estate is that you set your own hours. And she basically said that if you sit down with a new agent and actually audit their time, 9 times out of 10, they actually think they're doing more than they actually are. So the downside is that, people just aren't using their time wisely, and if you're, 2 to 3 hours, a day doing, business that moves the needle, like, you're getting smoked by the people that are, full time and into this. So that's one thing. It's funny you mentioned, because this week I actually did not time block that much.
It makes a huge difference.
It does. And so here's the thing is like, okay, when I go do a beachfront home, like, I'm not going to be flying the drone. I'm not going to be recording, I'm not going to be editing it. I have somebody that's doing that for me. So that's also dependent upon somebody else's schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I first started doing content, Sam, who was coaching me, was like, you do not want to be in a situation where you're, basically you have to fit around somebody's schedule. You want it to be like, hey, you're going on a hike, right? And you're going to do this,
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't have the excuse, because most of the time you're going to have an excuse not to do it, right? So the first thing is really having some sort of idea. And that's what I'm saying, as like these ideas come in, I write them down. And I'm like, okay, how would I do this? Right. And is this even worth? I might come back tomorrow and be like, that was a terrible idea. Like, so Pedro, I basically was like, hey, look, my face is on our company channel a lot, and I just want to diversify it. I want other people's faces on there. So I said, instead of me going and asking an attorney question, like, here's 5 questions, so go sit down with an attorney and ask these questions that would be, valuable to, a US buyer that's coming to buy in Mexico. Right. And I told him, I said, look, like, we put these up and they were getting a lot of engagement. So I said, if I was you, I would, as clients ask you questions about the market here and you don't know the answer, write it down. And then when you have 5 of them, go back to the attorney and say like, hey, and they like it because they're getting the business too, right? And they're getting the engagement. And then, rinse and repeat every time you have 5 questions, even if you kind of know the answer to, but just can't really describe it well. Because I mean, I'm not an attorney. So I can give you my 2 cents. So like a lot of times if somebody asks me a question, I'll be like, hey, this is like my thought, but also here's a video that I did with the head of the Bar Association for Baja California Sur, who's also licensed to practice in the US, or at least in New York and Washington, D.C., and got his LLM at University of Texas, Austin. Here's what he has to say about it. And this guy knows a lot more about the subject than me, and that way it's like, hey, what I said. And then also really what's more important is what he is saying as the expert. Maybe you need to get more strategic with like ideas or something, but like, as far as you could do a video at the gym, you could do one waking up, you could do one at a party, you could do one on a yacht in Miami, you could do one, with your family, whatever, right? You could do one having drinks out. Hey, this is a good restaurant. Like, so you don't really have because you could literally pull out your phone and do something anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people, they'll get in this thing where, and then a week goes by. And I've done this too, where I was out of town, went to a wedding in Brazil. I got a little sick. We had this real estate conference that we put on. And, maybe like a month and a half went by without I didn't do content. And then I was playing catch up, and now I'm back on it. And I'm like, why do I have so many like tours coming up? And it's like, well, now you're back doing the content. So a lot of times the consistency, you see a lot of agents, I call it the new sales, new shoes syndrome. We had an agent, and like after a sale, you saw like the new shoes come out, the new hat, the new outfit, and there's nothing wrong with buying stuff, right? I'm not saying that.
Right.
But it was the mentality that like something had been accomplished and now you can, go into first gear, because the people that are really doing good business, it's like, when something hits the bank account, it really doesn't affect their activity. It's like they're almost even more motivated to get the next one and keep like that inertia going. So being consistent.
Yeah. And it does. I think you hit the nail on the head by saying that it piles up when you take a break, because then you're stressed out. So if you can just consistently time block it, and sometimes it's an easy something. You can have like a 1-sentence punny caption. Sometimes it's an hour-long effort of caption. Sometimes it's just like a quick trending video, like mix it up so that it's easy for yourself. And like you said, I also have like a long list of ideas for what I need to get, or the goal of a video, so that I know what I need to get along the way. And I feel like no matter what city you're in, I've been doing stuff at restaurants. And so I'll just do like a few of the scenery, of course, one with me holding my drink and all my food, and people save it. And now my goal, which I've only put up like 3, but my goal is to have people come back to my page and think that I know what's up, right? They might not know that I sell real estate, but they at least know that I'm there. And if they need something, they're like, oh, that Lauren girl, she's always putting stuff out. What can I find?
You show your personality too, and then you're not one of the commodity agents where you're just trying to sell stuff, right? And that's a really good point. There's an agent here, and she's visiting New Orleans in like 2 weeks. And she's like, hey, Fletcher, I'm going to New Orleans. I'm going to be there for like this week. What restaurants and what should I be doing? And I was like, man, I haven't lived in New Orleans for a long time. I was like, they have the spots that I might know right now are probably not good. So I pinged my older sister and I was like, Lydia, hey, like, what do you recommend? And she had all these restaurants and like cool things to do. And I was like, man, if I had tried to send a list right there, this person might have had an actually like bad trip, right?
Mhm.
So, and especially in an area like, any place that has like tourist traps and stuff, it's like, hey, these cool spots that aren't necessarily, they can be trending, right? But like where you have like the local knowledge where you can say like, hey, if this is your budget or you want to ball out, like go to Queen. If
Right.
you want to do this, like go here. If you want to
Right.
just have like, literally, some sort of like cool ceviche from a food cart or something, like this is the spot, or like some Cuban food, So
Yeah.
I think that's huge because, you have so much more insight into that than the other people, and it's super valuable.
Right. And just looking at the little moments of like documenting. So all of the bridges in Miami, for example, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them, they have this thing that for the boats to go up that are super tall, right?
Yeah.
Robert. I don't even know what it's called, but I've been trying to take videos of it because it's so cool. The first time I saw it, like it stops traffic, it causes traffic, and everybody has to wait, right? And it's like, not only are you looking at these insane yachts that are going through, but it's just like the construction of it, right? It's every 30 minutes, it's every hour. So you can just watch things go. I mean, it interrupts your day a little, but like if you've never been to Miami or seen that, which I hadn't, I thought it was so cool to see. So like even that, which has become a daily thing for me, that it's like, ugh, whatever, the bridge is something I want to document. So I'm looking for documenting instead of creating because people don't know. I mean, think about all the people who like never travel or don't want to travel. So they live through social media. Like you're their wealth of knowledge. And if they ever go there, they're going to feel like they have their whole itinerary planned out. Like I think that marketing is, especially for real estate agents, it's really about lifestyle, restaurants, not just real estate, not like, oh, hi, I just sold a $5 million house. It's more than that. But people get so, their ego gets so wrapped up in showing what they've sold, which is why I did that long stretch of demonstrating knowledge to buyers and sellers that if you work with me, I'm smart, I know what to do, I know how to solve things, rather than just like video walkthroughs. I don't know.
No, exactly. And you're showing your personality,
Totally.
it's funny. There was this guy, Reese. He's originally from New Zealand, and he reached out, and I could just tell by the initial contact that this guy was like super laid back. And I remember I just had come from the gym. And so like I meet him and I shake his hand and I'm like, hey Reese, and I'm like, nice to meet you. And I'm like, hey, I apologize for the outfit. I didn't think you'd care too much. And he goes, hey mate, he goes, I didn't hire you for fashion advice, you know?
Good
But it was
answer.
once like, exactly. And I was like, cool. And it was just like, get on to it. But like the guy was there, but he wanted to see you show your personality, right? And by
Mhm.
doing different things, you're going to show that, right? But that's my thing. If you're just showing homes and not doing something like creative, I think you just don't stand out. And I'm not saying you can't get business at, or that those types of videos shouldn't be part of your uh, schedule or something like that, but you just need to show more of your personality and do stuff that's gonna like, is this valuable for my avatar?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many ways to go about it. There's no right or wrong. That's why you have to figure out what works for you. Try it, kick it, tweak it, whatever it is. So this has been so great. As we both know, we can talk about anything forever.
No, like, and that's what I'm saying. If people actually or people are enjoying these, because once again, I enjoy kicking it with you, Lauren. You have like a completely different background, completely different audience, completely different area. But I admire the fact that you're doing like something that works for you marketing wise. So if people are getting value out of this, I'm completely open to doing more stuff around content, even going, so I'm saying I can go into the weeds on like the buckets and things where it gets super intense. But and that's why people are like, man, this guy's like, it's like science, But then once again, you're not gonna overcomplicate it. But if I go down another tangent, we'll probably be on for another 15 minutes or
Well, we
half
can
hour
take
more. So
we can take our own advice and try it for 6 months and just film once a week,
there you
twice
go.
a month.
There you go. I was leading up to that. I got you, right? I tricked you.
Oh, so thank you. Where would you like everyone to find you? Because it will also be in the
Yeah.
Subscription.
Well, my webpage is cabokey.com. And I work for a company called Remexico. I'm the broker. And if anybody's interested in Cabo, the lifestyle in Baja, feel free to reach out. And yeah, Lauren, I appreciate it. And we'll looking forward to the next one.
We're doing another one. We just committed. So thank you guys. Appreciate your time. Send us any questions.